Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanee and Clarky visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Super duper.
Riding high.
Riding high.
All on that all-night schlong from last week.
Oh, God.
Jeepers.
No way I can cut that out now,
That's
can
a
I?
lot.
It weaves its way throughout the whole thing. I tell you, it was totally irrelevant. I don't know what it was even in the trial for, but anyway.
Did you say it weaves its way or
weaves?
Oh, weaves.
Weaves
I feel like
indeed.
once you've heard it, you can't unhear it, so they may as well put it in. Maybe that's why the first lot of jurors were excluded.
Yeah, maybe. It's so
Traumatised.
distracted by that.
What? He can't have done it with a schlong like
He was
that.
hospitalised. He had to go to hospital for it because it wouldn't go down. Anyway. Internet,
was in
one
the
of the
trial.
random articles.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like it's the standard, you go through and you get
On ronjeremy.com.
30% of the story in one thing. And, you know, it's too soon for anyone to have put it together in Wikipedia or anything. So it did require a bit of stitching. And just this sort of weird fact, I think it was maybe making a point about him being very sexual, you know.
Very virile.
Yes.
I can't judge his sexuality on the size of his enormous schlong that won't go down.
I honestly don't know what it was about. But anyway,
Anyway, enough about
Enough
last
about
week's
that.
story.
may he rest in peace. First, we should
Jesus.
introduce ourselves. I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanee.
And I'm Clarky. And together we are Trial
Trial
by Wine.
Wine.
Just
and what are we
like that.
drinking?
Wine.
We are drinking wine.
We are
yes.
on to bottle number. Actually, Stuart has just proudly announced that we've run out of the rosé.
Well, lucky we kept it for today because we did, Swanee. We had a bit of it yesterday, but we said, we better hang on to it for our podcasting. So
Yes, we can't be on the reds.
We only bought 6 bottles, so we had 2 yesterday and 4 today.
Oh, I know.
Oh, we had sparkling
We
red.
had
Red.
sparkling red
We've
last
got
night.
plenty
which
of
fucked me
reds.
up.
Yeah,
we got
fuck
plenty
you
of
up.
reds. We got some sparkling
up.
white as well. It did.
me
It
up.
Yeah,
fucked me up.
You
Brad.
stay off the red, honey. You fuck you up. Or the
And then-
sparkling red.
And then the boys
No more
bought
for you.
a bottle of Kahlua in honour of my dearly departed father, the
Yes.
captain.
Yes.
Oh.
So we had a
That was a nightcap.
Kahlua nightcap.
So
which
we
I
should
probably
tell that
didn't need.
story. So the captain, whenever we used to come, he used to call us the girls.
Yes.
And he loved his koala. He used to call Kahlua koala. So we would bring him a bottle of koala every time we came.
That's so
we'd
nice.
bring other stuff. But well, it's just it's like a bit of a tradition. So we were like, we've got to bring a koala.
That's really
So
nice.
then we had
I
to
like
sneak
that.
one in.
How
We may have another
thoughtful.
one later. Who knows?
Yeah.
Does that make you a bit emotional, Schmitty?
It
very
did. They
nice,
came
isn't
in
it?
and they said, look, we bought a bottle of koala. And I was like, oh.
I bet it made you emotional after all your sparkling red and whatever else.
I
by the
hadn't
time you...
had anything at that point.
Oh, I was
And
going to say,
said,
by the end of the night when you went to koala, you might have been feeling a bit noshy.
we toasted, Dad. But I was like, stop, you made me cry. Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah, and we used to call him Captain Schmidt because he
Because he was
captained
captain of the
boat.
vessel. That's right.
Captain.
Captain
The old
Schmidt.
Captain Schmidt. So who's got a story?
You better lift your game or Stuart's going to take this
hell.
podcast over. I have.
You got a story? Great. Tell me more.
I
Tell me
do
more.
have a story. I'm going to take a leaf out of Swanee's book and go
Yeah.
straight into my sources.
Great.
Because I think there have been numerous times where I've told my sources, but sometimes it's midway through the podcast. We have to cut it out and,
Put it back in. Yeah.
So straight up, Mamma Mia, Wikipedia, abc.net.au, and maybe British Path or British Pathe, Pathe.
Oh, French. Yeah.
.com.
Pathe.
Yep.
They're a movie company.
It's not fair to put British in front of that.
No, I think
because
there's
it
a
doesn't.
British archive. There's a British archive of Pathé stuff.
BritishPatheStuff.com.
Yeah.
What is it,
Right.
though? Is it a...
It's just
I
not
think
fair
you're
to,
right that
to
it
use
was
a
a-
French word with British in front of it
I
because
thought it was an
so
archive.
confusing.
Of like old,
Sometimes it comes up before. I don't know if it's TV or movies or both. I can picture it, but I don't...
I thought it might have been like, that is so passé, but you've got a lisp to say that is so pathé.
Pate. If it depends which way the accent goes, but it's the correct way. It's like A. E means the A. Pathé.
Anyway,
It's a
I was
French
right.
major
It's
film
a
production and distribution company.
British Pathé.
Swanee,
or
most
however you say it,
importantly,
is the
Schmitty was
world's
right.
finest newsreel archive.
Oh.
And
Right.
then there's
There you go.
cinemas
But I feel
across
like
Europe.
let's go to the story. I went through this stage when I was at school, in high school, where I was either going to be a forensic scientist or a lawyer. And it was formed from watching a number of movies, including The Accused. It's all
About
about
the
the
Amish,
gang
yeah?
rape of Jodie Foster's character.
Oh, no.
And she gets...
Got an
it's
Oscar for it,
horrible.
didn't she?
I don't know
Entirely.
that she got an Oscar, but she was incredible in it. She may have done. I just don't know
She
that.
did.
She was amazing. Anyway, so she gets, like, it's awful. It's like in a bar. She's over a pinball machine. She gets gang raped.
Academy Award for Best Actress in a Leading Role.
There you go. She did. Well done.
She did for that, yeah. Because I've not thought of that movie in a long, long time, but now it's sort of
I had, you know the cutouts they used to do at the video stores? I had a cutout of The Accused in my bedroom at one point.
A cardboard cutout.
The cardboard cutouts they did that they stood up to promote the movie. I don't know how I ended up getting it, but anyway, I had it. I found that movie incredible. And it's obviously about the gang rape of Jodie Foster's character and the huge legal process to bring the rapists to justice. And it was, at the time, it was described as a very real portrayal of the process that rape victims went through when they actually did front up and take... or try to take their accused to court, because often, you know, back then it didn't happen. They would just go, "Oh,
They wouldn't believe them."
Well, they wouldn't. I mean, the shame
it's
of it, you wouldn't even go to the police.
Do you hear
let
what you
alone
just said?
if
You said they used to just go, oh.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's because you went...
someone would turn up and they'd just go, oh.
Anyway, that's...
Oh. Where'd that laugh come from?
Oops, I know. You're channeling my voice at the moment.
That was like
It's
a sort of my throat's getting so high pitched kind of.
So, importantly, Schmitty, weirdly, when they did get convicted, they didn't get sentenced to glass rotting. But spoiler alert, they did get convicted. This week's story is about a case that is widely regarded as pioneering sophisticated forensic investigation in Australia. So to hear the story, we're going to have to jump in a timey-wimey machine and we're going to head back to 1960s Australia. So for those of you who don't know anything about Australia, let alone 1960s Australia, here's a few things that happened. So in January, a heatwave killed 11 people in Central Australia. In March, the first Adelaide Festival was featured. On the 1st of June in Hobart, the last tram ran because earlier in April, a runaway tram crashed into another tram. Several vehicles, including a bus, were hit by trams. A conductor was killed and more than 40 people were treated for injuries.
Well, all in one hit, or that was a series of things?
One event.
One runaway tram.
Shit
carnage.
got real. And Hobart went, no more trams. We are done.
Are dangerous,
Trams
man.
are
They go
trouble.
rogue.
We are not going to
They're
have this.
smashing into buses. They're smashing into each other.
Yeah,
People out.
Conductors are dying. 40 people are injured. And then on the 30th of June, compulsory national service training for men ended. So that was stuff that was happening to that point. But for today's story, we're in Sydney and the Opera House is under construction. And like so many government projects in Australia, well, so it seems at the moment anyway,
The budget
the
blew out
cost
by
of
$1 billion.
construction is
Yeah.
blowing out. Exactly that. So the New South Wales government decides to hold a series of lotteries to raise much-needed funds to complete the iconic building.
I feel like Victoria could benefit from that, except they already have
lottery, so they can't do that. They've already pulled that trigger.
Oh, God, it's massive in WA. It pays for everything.
Yeah. Well, it does here too. But WA, though, I think talks about the
benefits of their lotto program
Yeah.
much more than probably the East Coast.
Absolutely. It's promoted, it's shared. Like you turn up everywhere, it says that it's provided by money from Lottery West or whatever else. It's really part of, just assume that it's something that's going to good. They
And
really do promote it really
seems
well.
like a community service over there, doesn't it? Whereas here it's like
Gambling.
they offer a prize of £100,000, which the article that I read, which was from 2021, said that was the equivalent of 3.1 million.
Jeepers.
A lot of money.
That said, someone just won $100 million in Powerball all to themselves.
Yeah,
I mean,
what was
good
a house
for
in the
her.
60s? Like £5 or something.
$1.80, honey. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't much.
It was cheap. Yeah.
So
It only cost £10 for an English person to come over on a boat in
£10 pom.
the 60s.
£10.
Yeah.
Yep. They decide to hold a series of lotteries, and they offer a prize of £100,000, equivalent of 3.1 mil, and they start selling tickets. Anyway, the process goes along nicely, and lottery number 10 rolls around, and it was drawn on the 1st of June 1960. And the winning ticket was number 3932. The number's not relevant, just a little fact. It was purchased by Basil Thorne. Basil?
Mr. Faulty.
Now, back in the day, in 1960s Australia, we were a very innocent nation. There wasn't a lot of bad shit that happened. We were young, we were free, we were girt by sea.
In the 60s, wasn't that when that bloke one of you covered was killing people in WA? Was that
This is
in the 60s?
1960.
Yeah, it wasn't that early.
So it's literally 1st of June 1960, not later on in the 60s.
Okay.
So at this point, Australia's
We're
very
innocent
innocent.
in 1959.
But so there's no need for transparency with lotto winners, so it's commonplace to announce the winner and report their details in the media. And in fact, this was done as part of transparency. So to make sure that
You could prove that somebody actually did get the prize that the government was saying you would get, they promoted the fact.
And so Basil's details were posted on the front pages of Sydney newspapers.
They also reported he would receive his money on the 7th of July, a little over a month later. Now, the Thorne family, who were super excited about winning the prize, consisted of Basil, his wife Frida, his older daughter Cheryl, the son Graeme, and younger daughter Belinda. And Swanee and Schmitty, I'm not sure about how close this is, but I reckon, Swanee, you'll want to Google this if you don't already know.
Yeah.
They lived in a rented house at 79 Edward Street in Bondi.
Oh my God. It's so close to where I lived. That's unbelievable.
Really?
Yep. On the map, it would be, I lived in a street called Penkerville Street. I don't know. It's like one street away.
Wow, there you go.
Sat below where I lived. Yep.
So they've just won the equivalent of 3.1 million in 2021 money, so possibly more than that now. So payday rolls around, and on the 7th of July, Basil is out of town for work. And Frida goes through the normal routine, helps son Graeme, who was 8 at the time, pack his school bag and fasten his tie.
Aww.
She made sure he had not one but 2 handkerchiefs in his pocket, and she kissed him goodbye. Graeme, as he did every other day, followed his normal routine, leaving the home at 8:30 a.m. to walk 300 metres to the corner of Wellington and O'Brien Streets, where a family friend, Phyllis Smith, would pick him up and take him to school with her sons. It's weird in today's society to think, why wouldn't she have just driven the 300 metres and picked him up from the house? But back then, it would just save her having to go 300 metres down another street and come back. So it was probably super convenient, and the risk was low. Anyway, Phyllis pulled up at the corner at her usual time of 8:40 and looked for little Graeme, but he was nowhere to be seen. So she drove to the Thornes' home to see if he was still coming to school. Frida answered the door and said yes, he was going to school and should have been waiting on the corner. She assumed that he may have made his own way to school. Phyllis was heading to school with her sons anyway, so she checked when she dropped them off. She returned not long after and advised Frida that Graeme had not made it to school.
Oh.
Frida then rang the police and reported him missing. Sergeant Larry O'Shea of the Bondi Police arrived at the house at 9:30 a.m.
Larry O'Shea sounds like it should be at the Bondi Hotel, Schmitty. I think we met him.
To be sure,
Doesn't sound
To
like
me,
the place. Like
We certainly met a few at the Bondi Hotel. Yeah.
To me, that's an excellent response time, though. So
Yes.
Phyllis would have gone to pick
Turn
him
that
up
around
at
very quickly, I
8:40,
agree.
gone to the house, gone to the school, gone back to the house, ringing the police. He's there at 9. So this is not a case of defective detectives.
No.
Then, at 9:40 a.m., the phone rang.
Oh, here we go.
Do we?
Oh, it feels like a kidnap for ransom, but yeah, go on.
Frida answered the phone, and a man with a foreign accent said that he had kidnapped Graeme and wanted a ransom.
Shock me.
Frida passed the phone to Sergeant O'Shea, who pretended to be Basil.
To be sure, I'm Basil.
Yeah.
The caller said, I have your boy. I want £25,000 before 5 o'clock this afternoon. I'm not fooling. If I don't get the money before 5 o'clock, I'll feed the boy to the sharks. O'Shea expressed doubt about his ability to get such a large sum of money that day, as he was unaware that they'd won the lottery.
Right.
The caller said he would call back at 5 p.m. with more details and hung up, leaving Frida and Sergeant O'Shea shocked and obviously shaken. O'Shea reported the incident back to the police station, and other police turned up to assist with the investigation. They got straight into the investigation, conducting a concentrated search near the Thorne house in Bondi. News of the kidnapping made its way to Bill Jenkins of the Daily Mirror, and they planned a public appeal on television that night. Frida, of course, waited by the phone at 5 p.m. for the man to call. However, 5 p.m. came and passed, and the caller did not phone. At 8:30 p.m, a televised appeal took place at the Bondi police station, with New South Wales Police Commissioner Colin Delaney and Basil Thorne making an emotional plea for Graeme to be returned. It wasn't until 9:47 p.m. that the phone rang. This time a different policeman answered the phone and again pretended to be Basil. It was a kidnapper, and he started to give instructions that the money was to be put into 2 paper bags. Now, the police officer was taking down the details, but he was also stalling to keep the kidnapper on the phone so they could trace the call. And as he was doing so, the kidnapper abruptly hung up without providing further instructions. So here we are, they need £25,000 in 2 paper bags, and that's about it. The next day, a tip was received that a boy matching Graham's description was seen with 2 men and a woman heading out of Pennant Hills. The owners of a petrol station there had reported that they saw a group pulling into their petrol station at about 10 p.m. the day before. The owners described the vehicle as a dark-coloured Dodge-style sedan with the front number plate missing. The group purchased fuel, and as their vehicle left, the owners managed to sight the rear number plate.
Oh, yes.
They're good.
Good work. The vehicle was spotted the next day by an off-duty policeman, however it sped off. Checks were done, and it was found that the number was registered to a different vehicle.
Oh, right, so they'd stolen the plate.
So then the day after Graham's abduction, on the evening of Friday the 8th of July, Graham's school case was found near Seaforth in Sydney's northeastern suburbs, and the investigation shifted to that location. Then on the 11th of July, Graham's school cap and contents of his case were found, and an official reward of £5,000 was declared. Another reward was offered by 2 newspapers. As a result, the phone rang hot, and police had to sift through hoax calls and misinformation to discover 2 key pieces of information. Firstly, a foreign man had been seen numerous times by witnesses in the park opposite the house. And secondly...
Do we know what foreign? What
foreign?
kind
of foreign?
What does it matter? It's 1960s Australia.
Everyone, no, but there was
exactly.
So
what
it would
sort
have
of
been,
foreign?
It would have been they all looked the same. I don't know.
I know this is going to be really inappropriate, and I don't actually know what it means, but what's a dago? Remember that was such a dated word, a dago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is a dago.
Yeah.
And again, for our international listeners, wog was referring to European...
Southern Mediterranean
extraction. It didn't have any connotations around being a person of colour.
Oh, no, not at all.
But it was derogatory anyway.
Yeah, and that's what I think. So dago precurses that, doesn't it, I think? God, when was the last time you heard the word dago?
Regardless of that, it's 1960s Australia. There's somebody who isn't Caucasian seen in the park opposite.
Yeah.
So therefore, they're obviously foreign.
Yeah.
And secondly, and most importantly, at 8:20 a.m. on the morning of the kidnapping, some witnesses had seen an iridescent Ford Custom Line double parked on the corner of Francis and Wellington Streets.
Oh, what?
Near where Graham waited for Phyllis to collect him. So I tell you what, police in the 1960s didn't muck around. They set about checking more than 270,000 registration records.
Jesus, and that before computers.
Computers.
Amazing.
And established there were 5,000 vehicles matching the general description. I mean, God, imagine how long that would take pre-computers.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
no.
yeah.
Police assumed that the car had either been borrowed or stolen, but figured their best move was to interview all of the owners.
It's 5,000.
So they set about contacting the 5,000 vehicle owners. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. Like,
How many people were on this case, though? Like the entire police force?
I'm assuming not.
No, it
Also,
must have been well resourced.
also the entire police force wouldn't have been that big. Like 5,000. I'm assuming that's 5,000 vehicle owners in New South Wales.
Yeah.
So they're not easy to find. Anyway, God knows how long it would take. But then, on the 16th of August, almost 6 weeks after the kidnapping, 2 boys reported to their parents that they'd seen a blue picnic blanket a while back and that it looked suspicious.
Oh, no.
The parents, because this was becoming a thing in the media, reported it, and a boy's body was found on vacant land in Grandview Grove, Seaford. The body was wrapped in a blue tartan picnic blanket and tucked into a ledge. The boy had been tied with string, gagged with a scarf, and was still wearing his school uniform. Basil identified the body as Graeme's the next day at the city morgue. Again, police in the 1960s
They would have been incensed now.
In this story, they're the kind of police you'll want on your side, right? So they set about trying to find clues that would lead them to the killer, and the blue tartan picnic blanket was sent off for forensic examination. Then on the 24th of August, as part of their bazillion interviews of car owners, they interviewed Schmitty.
No, they didn't. I wasn't there.
They interviewed Schmitty, Hungarian immigrant Stephen Bradley.
Istvan, if you don't mind.
Who said that he wasn't in Bondi that day.
It'll be Istvan Bradley.
Wasn't he an ice skater?
Yeah, no, the guy, Stephen Bradbury.
Bradbury, not Bradley. Yeah. Very, very close. So now he said he wasn't in Bondi that day. Now earlier today, Schmitty and I were talking about how we can't remember what we did yesterday, let alone 6 weeks ago.
True.
So police didn't think too much more of it. Now, this case is widely regarded as pioneering sophisticated forensic investigation in Australia, and let me tell you a little bit about why. The body was examined, and they found cuts, abrasions, and internal trauma. Now, before I do this, so Swanee, we often talk about Law and Order, as we've stated a number of times,
Yes.
And things happen smoothly and quickly on TV. They don't necessarily do that in real life, let alone in 1960s Australia. But so they found cuts, abrasions, and internal trauma, and it was clear that little Graeme had died from either asphyxiation or a skull fracture or a combination of the two. Forensic experts gathered time data from Graeme's body, including his stomach contents, fungi on his shoes, and fly larvae. The examination established that Graeme had been murdered within 24 hours of his kidnapping and dumped soon afterwards. In addition, soil scrapings from the body and the blanket showed tiny fragments of pink limestock mortar, revealing his body had been stored under a house.
Oh God, imagine this about your child. Oh,
it's awful.
No, but it's fascinating that because, DNA has like revolutionized things, but how much they can get from bugs, at what period, how long they can tell through the gestation and larvae and whatever of bugs that are eating a corpse, how long it's been in that situation. Yep. They can tell from, as you say, like dirt, mold, any kind of organic thing that is in relation to the body, whether it should be there or not, and it gives them a sense of where the body was kept or whether it's been buried somewhere else. Like, it's just fascinating how much they can tell.
And so this is regarded as the case in Australia, so from 1960, that actually pushed all of that into a sophisticated framework to find a killer. Anyway.
I just want to say, though, because obviously he anglicised his name, Istvan Varanye.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So the examination of the blanket revealed that it was number 639 of 3,000 blankets made at Onkaparinga Mills in South Australia.
God, beautiful.
What?
Onkaparinga, I love them. Yeah.
Do they know that it's that number because they were all serial numbers?
Yeah.
They're expensive blankets.
Yes. Onkaparinga, super expensive indeed.
So made between...
If you would like to sponsor us, Onkaparinga.
The 6th of June, 1955 and the 19th of January, 1956. They also found... So the blanket had been sold to a friend of Stephen Bradley's wife, who had been given...
And it had been given to her as a gift. But at this point, police had not connected the two pieces of evidence relating to Stephen as the car owner and the link to the blanket, because they're unfolding all of this. They're not necessarily piecing it all together.
Okay.
That would happen later.
Further examination of the blanket found it had traces of two tree types, Ready for me to murder some Latin tree names? Chamaecyparis piscifera and the Cupressus glabra. Anyway.
Cypresses.
Cypresses is what they are, yes. And identified these two tree types were not present in the vacant lot in which the blanket was found. They also found blonde human hair and Pekingese hair. What's our nose for Pekingese, Lee?
Poor things.
Again?
Again, close to the mic.
Fucking Pekingese.
So much better on the mic.
So police went searching for a house with a blue car, pink mortar, and two tree species growing in its yard. Species growing in its yard. Although cypresses could be found growing in many people's yards, the combination of the two was rare.
The two different types of trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
This search was made public, and following a tip-off from a postman, police were led to a house at 28 Moore Street in Clontarf.
That's next to Seaforth.
Importantly, this house was 1.5 kilometres from where the body was found. Police visited the house on Monday the 3rd of October. However, it had been vacated. Not to be put off, they did some investigation and found that it had previously been occupied by none other than our Hungarian immigrant friend, Stephen Bradley.
Yeah.
They then identified him as the owner of an iridescent blue 1955 Ford Custom Line.
And found that he owned a Pekingese and his wife had dyed blonde hair.
I thought you said it died.
Do we know where his wife was from?
I did.
Blonde hair.
Was she like Eva Gabor?
I think she's Australian.
Eva Gabor,
Or
maybe.
she's Zsa.
Zsa Gabor.
Peasant
That's
girl
I
what
never
Zsa.
hated a man enough to give him back his diamonds.
I saw the opening credits for Green Acres a couple of weeks ago. It was brilliant. Green Acres is the place to be. And it's like, and then she's like, Park Avenue, and she's like, talking about apartment, darling. It's just she's so amazing.
So further investigation found they had vacated the house on, you guessed it, the 7th of July. The day that the Thornes were going to get their lotto win and the day that little Graeme had been kidnapped. They'd moved to a rented house at 49 Osborne Street in Manly and then left for London on the 26th of September aboard the SS Himalaya, evading police by a week. But we're talking about 1960s Australian cops.
Yeah.
So they
And
picked up the phone and they called it.
They don't
takes
muck
them all to get
around.
there.
They went, I'll be fucked. So they went and worked out the route of the SS Himalaya.
Yeah.
And got their jet skis.
They
Cape
head to
Town
Colombo,
somewhere? Colombo,
in
right.
then Ceylon,
Oh.
also now known as Sri
What year
Lanka.
is this now? 60. Oh, I think Mum went to. So my mum went to Colombo on a boat in 61, I think.
Wow.
I don't want to say that you learnt your skills from your parents, but,
Evading police and, yeah.
So on Monday the 10th of October, two Sydney policemen, Sergeants Brian Doyle and Jack Bateman, were waiting for Bradley as the SS Himalaya docks in Colombo. So they've gone to the house on Monday the 3rd of October, and they're waiting in Colombo on the 10th of October, a week later, in the 1960s. It's impressive.
They're not fucking about.
So it takes 5 weeks of legal carry-on, but Bradley was finally extradited back to Australia on the 18th of November 1960. And apparently he made a verbal confession to Sergeant Bateman. The next day at 10 a.m, Bradley signs a written confession, which he later retracts. But part of the statement read, I went out and watched the Thorne boy leaving the house. I apologise now for the bad grammar. There's also terrible spelling, but this is actually what he said and what he wrote. I went out and watched the Thorne boy leaving the house and seen him for about 3 mornings, and I've seen where he went. And one morning I have followed him to the school at Bellevue Heights. 1 or 2 mornings I've seen a woman pick him up and take him to school. On the day we moved from Clontarf, I went out to Edward Street. I parked the car in a street I don't know the name of. The street is off Wellington Street. I've got out from the car and waited on the corner until a boy walked down to the car. Bradley was taken into custody and his trial was set for Monday the 20th of March 1961. Who is Stephen Bradley?
Oh,
Well, he was
Stephen
born
Bradley?
Istvan Baranye in Budapest.
Istvan.
I'm telling the story. I'll murder the names as I see fit. In Budapest on the 15th of March 1926, and having survived World War II and the communist takeover, had arrived in Melbourne on the 28th of March 1950.
1950, interesting.
Where does that compare to your father?
56 was the revolution, so he's left it in communist rule at the time.
When did your dad arrive?
56. Dad ran away.
Yes.
Dad escaped Hungary after the revolution, went to Austria and met his parents there because his parents had already left.
Yes.
And then they had a choice of going to, Dad wanted to go to Africa or London or Australia or Canada, and they chose Australia. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Sorry, Clarky.
No, that's the important bit that you should be adding to the story.
Says you, who kept preempting all of my story the last time. Anyway, go on.
He married at some point, however, divorced in 1948. So he got to Australia in 1950, so I'm assuming he married before that because he divorced in 1948. He then remarried in 1952 and had a child with Eva Maria Laszlo in Melbourne, living with her until her death in a car accident on the 26th of February 1955. Baronier later anglicised and changed his name by deed poll to Stephen Leslie Bradley Schmitty.
That would be high on my list of names if I was moving it from adding a Leslie in there. I think that's really a real ripper.
3 new names.
Well, Istvan is Hungarian for Stephen.
Okay, right.
And Baronier is as close to Bradley, but with the first wife,
Leslie,
the fact that she'd anglicised her surname as well?
Well, I think that must have been of its time, right? It must have been a thing,
and that's why I'm wondering, because
because you don't want to be called a foreigner in the park across the road or a wog.
It's the wog thing. I don't think
it's more than a wog thing. It's a Jewish thing as well. It's people trying to have a new start and changing their name from Greenbird to Green or whatever it is. It's people really just trying to fit in.
Been Jewish as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I read something during the week which was about how people did anglicise their names and they were saying don't do it because these people had been trying to trace their family back and because their name had been anglicised, they couldn't work out all of the history. Interesting. Anyway, selfish to say that you shouldn't do it.
Yeah,
because you want to find
if
stuff
you're
out.
Spat on in the street because you're foreign and you've got a
It's not important. I want to know what my history is.
Or you grow up being called shit your whole life because your father didn't anglicise us to Smith.
Oh, thank God he didn't. You'd never be a Smith.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been friends with you if you're a Smith.
No, I don't think so either.
You guys are so judgy.
You're Smithy.
100%.
Smithy.
But
Smithy,
not of you, darling.
No,
we're not judgy of you. We're judgy of everyone else.
Yes.
Everyone named Smith by the sound of it.
Yeah. Correct. Well, that's not true. I do have a friend.
You're just not a Smith. That's not.
No. All right. Okay.
In 1958, he married a third time to Magda Whitman, a divorcee with 2 children.
Magda's very European too.
Magda.
Yeah, it is. Feeling pressure to care for his expanded family, he was forced to work a number of different jobs as their savings dwindled.
Forced to?
Well, he was.
How many kids is he looking after?
His and her 2, by the sounds of it.
Okay.
But he's stayed in the Hungarian community, hasn't he?
Of course.
All the wives are Hungarian too.
Yeah, exactly right.
And I bet they all speak Hungarian.
Well, and you would expect that.
It's funny, when you said a foreign man rang, I nearly put on Dad's accent, and then I thought, I won't, and that's why we're like, what kind of foreign?
I was nearly going to prompt you to, and I was like, oh no, it'll play out. We'll get to that.
Have you got an underpants?
Yeah, just one.
Yeah, exactly right. So he needed money, and there is a possibility that his actions were inspired by the April 1960 Peugeot ransom case in Paris. So in that case, 4-year-old Eric Peugeot, French motor film director's son, kidnapped from a St. Cloud, Swanee are probably murdering this.
St. Denis Cloud, is it?
Maybe. It just says Saint-Cloud, could be that, in Paris from a golf course on the 12th of April. He was subsequently returned safely 2 days later after his father paid a ransom estimated at between 35,000 and 60,000 British pounds. Wow.
How much is that now?
$1 billion. Yeah, I don't know. We've now got Stephen Bradley in custody, And the trial was a high-profile one given the public appeals that had taken place. And there were more than 400 people gathered outside the courthouse. 400 people probably doesn't sound like a lot nowadays, but 400 people in 1960s Australia is a lot.
Half the state.
Yeah, right? So inside the courthouse, like 400 people outside protesting, blah, blah, blah. Inside, Bradley pleads not guilty to murder, even though he was identified by the man seen by witnesses, including Frieda Thorne, Graeme's mum. However, he did admit to kidnapping, providing details of how he posed as a driver and fabricated a tale to get Graeme into his car that day. Once he was in, Stephen headed west to Centennial Park, where he assaulted Graeme, rendering him unconscious. He then tied him and wrapped him up in a blanket and placed him in the boot before driving north across the Sydney Harbour Bridge and making the first ransom call. Upon arriving at his Clontarf home, he checked on Graeme, who was at that point supposedly alive in the back of his car. He left him there and rechecked at 3 p.m. when he discovered that Graeme had apparently suffocated in the back of his car. His wife also testified, however, there was no evidence found that connected her to the murder.
And that's Magda, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Magda.
The trial lasted 9 days.
Not guilty.
And at its conclusion, Bradley was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Bradley listened quietly to the sentence and then made a 2-minute speech to the judge claiming he was the victim of public emotions and prejudice. He appealed the decision, however, the appeal was unanimously dismissed on the 22nd of May 1961. So this has all happened in less than a year.
Gosh.
So the kidnapping and murder of Graeme Thorne is one of the cases that marked the end of innocence in Australian life. Following the case, lottery procedures in Australia were changed, with winners being given the option to remain anonymous. The case also proved pivotal to the development of forensic science and also new kidnapping laws in Australia. Prior to the case, kidnapping such as this were unknown in Australia, and like I said, were referred to. Don't.
No,
just
not allowed
don't
to kidnap anymore in Australia. That's it.
Just
don't do it, right?
I mean, it was all fun until that point.
It must have been so shocking.
After the trial, Stephen Bradley was sent to Goulburn Jail, where he worked as a hospital orderly and was kept protected from other prisoners. His wife and children returned to Europe, and Magda Bradley divorced him in 1965. On the 6th of October 1968, Stephen Bradley died in prison of a heart attack whilst playing in the jail tennis competition. Oh. He was 42 at the time and was buried in the Catholic section of the Goulburn Cemetery. Anyway, up until his death, he apparently never showed any remorse whatsoever for his crime.
That's not very nice.
Meanwhile, the Thornes moved to Rose Bay. Basil died in December of 1978, and Frieda passed in 2012 at the age of 86. So that is a story of one of the, crimes, and certainly the kidnapping that ended the innocence in Australia.
How'd you find it, Clarky? What prompted you, or did you...
Googleizing?
Yeah, what did you look? Kidnapping or Australian crimes that changed the...
Yeah, I was looking for Australian crimes, and I do it quite a lot, but this one was, it just stood out.
I do feel that it's been a bit of a... very handy, because I have...
Mine handy?
Mine handy. I have a... I went and bought a lottery ticket the other day, and there's still a chance I could come into quite a bit of money. I didn't win the 100 million, but I might win. So I just haven't checked it yet. But
right.
It is good to keep it anonymous.
So when you do, don't check the box that says, yes, I want everyone to know my name, address, and
God,
when
why
I'm
would
gonna get
anyone
paid
want
out.
anyone to know that? That'd be horrendous in this day and age. Oh, God, imagine how much you get hassled.
Yeah, but back
Was
then...
Shakespeare someone or other, I can't remember his last name, he was a victim in a case he won the lottery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they
buried in the backyard.
Yeah, but they remember he went in and won, and then he came back out. Was it a scratchy, or was it?
Yeah, technically someone else's.
Or
he.
Yeah. But so this is the thing that Australia back then was so innocent. What they were doing was proving that the government actually paid out on the lottery. So they go and parade the bloke around and say, "Here's when he's going to be paid." Blah blah blah.
Oh, God.
And somebody not from Australia, with all due respect, oh my God, we're a country built on immigration. But so Stephen was from another part of the world, and he brought something to Australia that Australia hadn't seen, hadn't...
Yeah, he brought a worldliness.
Yeah, kind
Which
of.
probably would have come from surviving Hungary
100%.
in World War II.
World War II and stuff, yeah.
And if you overlay that with what's going on a lot in not just Australia, all around the world, that is more or less commonplace now, where you've got people who have had much tougher upbringings, bringing not so much their problems, but their coping mechanisms to a country that just doesn't have that. What do you think? How was that story?
I found it really interesting. And it's awful that a child died, because it was actually quite interesting to hear about, Sydney. Because often with these crimes, it's rare that we cover anything, certainly Australian, that's before about the 70s. So we're not often in that period of time. It's either well before or it's after. Yeah. So that's a really pivotal moment, as you say. It's kind of like that's the bridge between what we think is really old-fashioned and old Australia versus from out the time we were born, the 70s onwards. You can see the progression. But there's that little bit in between after the World Wars that life was just very different here. People were really trying to make a life for themselves, whether they'd come from somewhere else or they were already here. It was sort of like some years where, just settle down and get a house and look after your family and get ahead.
Work your ass off.
Yes.
But you could. And it's funny because I was thinking about the Australian anthem the other day. I can't remember which bits changed, but they've changed the lyrics.
We are one and free now, not we are young and free.
Oh, okay, right.
Because we're a pack of old moles now.
We're old now. But I was thinking about the with wealth for toil.
Yeah.
Yes. And I thought that's exactly what it was about. It was like you could have wealth provided you work really hard for it. Yeah. And, they talk about the American dream. I think the Australian dream was exactly the same, only almost more achievable and probably more achievable for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got a sentence if anyone's interested.
Oh, go on.
Oh.
Geez, you were quick.
Bring it on.
Well, because of the whole Hungarian
The Hungarian
thing,
thing, of course.
She's onto it.
Back in Hungary in the 1950s and after World War II, there was the secret police, and it was called...
How do you know?
Because I know a bit about Hungarian.
They were secret.
But it was secret. You shouldn't have known about it.
Shit secret.
But they used to disappear people. They would just, anyone who was...
secretly disappear people.
They just would take people.
Is that what they were, the known police, but they secretly disappeared
pretty
people?
Much they were KGB. They were
yeah.
of the KGB.
I understand. I'm just taking the piss.
And they would come along and they would remove you from your house and you'd never be seen again. And I remember reading something or seeing something about someone saying they could hear screaming in this old building and they felt like all the prisoners of Arvo were down there. Anyway, so I'm going to send our mate Istvan Baronier to remain in Hungary and do something that ticks Arvo off, and Arvo can pick him up, and then he's just taken away and no one ever has to go through...
Can get disappeared.
Can get disappeared. It's like a banishment, that's a disappeared us. And we can just not have him have this story, and Graeme could have grown up and had a life and his parents wouldn't have had to live with that trauma.
He's disappeared like Woods's.
Yeah, Woods's. So, yes, it's a bit like a Woods's.
I'm really intrigued, and I need to sort of look into it. I once saw part of I guess it was a documentary on ABC. It might have been earlier this year or late last year. And when I turned it on, it was about children sort of our age now looking into their parents' lives when they arrived in Australia. And there must have been a period of time in particular, certainly in likes of Melbourne and Sydney, where there would have been a little microcosm of Europe here, where those people had been displaced or whatever else and left for a variety of reasons end up here. And imagine what it'd be like for, say, your dad walking down the street, clocking that one going, because they would know, the different accents, different nationalities, whatever else. And my grandfather worked at the steelworks in Wollongong, and it was very similar there. They all had their own little communities within it. But some of those were, for each other. Some of them were against each other. It would have been very interesting just to be on the streets of Sydney and Melbourne thinking, because the thing I was actually watching was about, it was a Jewish family, and there was some secret kind of board or something, and they were tracking Nazis who had ended up in Australia, because there were some Nazis that ended up here. It's not all just the boys from Brazil in Brazil. Yeah. And I don't often think about that, but there must have been a time for your dad or whatever else where they were still kind of looking behind their shoulder, looking behind them to make sure that the people that they were hearing were friendly voices and not the people that they were running away from, or that they would be implicated, so for the people who were changing their names and trying to have new identities, there must have been a period in Australia where that was, for certain communities, really, I don't say challenging, but, that whole, they've got one foot in their old life and the next foot here, and trying to make that transition so that by the time, you come along, it's not a thing. But for those early years, it must have been very interesting for a lot of these people.
My grandfather, Pa, he definitely had contact and continued contact with various Hungarians who had come over. There were a series of people who were on the boat. So I was making the joke about the boat. The boat came into Fremantle.
Yes.
And that's where they came into. And then I don't know how they ended up in Melbourne, but...
they must have had a stomach for it, because lots of people who end up in Perth got here because they just could not get back on the boat. They didn't come to Australia to live in Perth. No one was interested in being here or Fremantle. They just could not keep going. They were like, I'm out. I'm done. That is just such a hard journey.
When I was a teenager, when you do you get assignments that are like, find out from your immigrant father, how he got here. And Dad was like, bullshit fucking, I'm not fucking doing that, no bullshit, not fucking, I don't want to think about it, fucking.
Oh, come on, Bill.
And I'm like, Dad, I've got to do it. It's an assignment. And the bit I remember about it, because I taped it with a cassette recorder, I remember him talking about when he got to Fremantle, he got off the boat and he had just a Hungarian to English dictionary because he didn't speak any English. Mm-hmm. And he saw a sign and it said hot dogs. And he was like, what's that? So he looks it up in the dictionary. He's like, these people are fucking animals. They eat fucking dogs here. I don't want to fucking be here. That's sorry. Of course, I had to take all the fuckings out.
Yeah, like sausage.
Yeah,
Frankfurter or something. Yeah.
To your point about the Hungarians and the community and stuff, Pa did it. But Dad was like, I don't want anything to do with Hungary. They have betrayed me. We had a revolution and no one stood by us, and the Russians came back in and pretty much decimated, took over.
Yes.
And, so he felt terribly betrayed by Hungary and didn't want anything to do with it. And he got some kind of award or something after Hungary changed back to democracy, the fall of the kind of these communist satellite states in whatever that was, 1990 or something. He got named in an award or something. He didn't want to go. He didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Wow.
And my sister had to take him. And the only other thing that we used to get the odd call, because there was a house we went to Waterfall, you and I.
Yeah.
And we saw the house, and it's a fixer-upper. But we would receive phone calls on occasion about people saying, you've got property here, because we had to, under the circumstances, the family had to leave. You can have it, is what I'd say, having seen it.
What a load of old shit.
But anyway, it probably might have been nice at the time, but it has since had gypsies in it, if you recall. Anyway, so I'm sending him off. What are you going to do?
What am I going to do?
I don't think any of this was motivated by murder, so I don't think he ever intended that Graeme would
No, I don't think he
die.
meant to kill him. He meant to get money.
I think it was all about the money. I think that
something happened where he went fucking crazy at Centennial Park and assaulted.
He probably screamed.
Bit overzealous.
I mean, who knows what it was, whether it was Stephen's intolerance of any kind of noise, his high levels of stress, whatever it was, but something happened and he went too hard with his assault. I also think that, it wasn't until probably Crown opened in Melbourne that we started advertising the fact that you actually shouldn't leave children in cars.
I don't think people
were
leaving children in the boot of the car, though, at the Crown.
Also, at Crown. Also, don't leave your fucking kids in cars. It's not okay. I think this is one of those stories of, I don't doubt he was stressed having to look after all of the people. And I think that, money would have been tight. I'm going to go that he wanted an easy fix, which is always the problem, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to do the hard yards. You just want all of the glory. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
The fact that he then goes, steal a kid, like, fuck, mate. That's awful.
That's the lowest of low.
Pick up a couple of extra shifts. maybe.
And right. I mean, but he was always working. He was already working a couple of extra jobs. Like, fuck, that's not going to get me the glory. What I need to do is steal a kid whose parents have won the lotto. And then if the kid isn't happy with my plan, I'll just beat fuck out of him till he's unconscious. Then I'll tie him up and wrap him in a blanket and chuck him in the boot. And then I'll check on him every now and then because surely, God, what does an unconscious kid who's had the shit beat out of him, tied up and wrapped in a blanket need? Not much. I'll just keep checking on him. All of a sudden, oh my God, he's dead. Well, that's not my fault. How the fuck did that happen? It's one of these stories of just escalating crazy. And if you look back retrospectively like we are, it's like, what the fuck, mate?
I'm sure there was something wrong with him.
Well, I didn't see any evidence of that other than all of the things that we've discussed that are wrong with him. It's not like he went out and goes, I'm going to kill a kid and I'm going to do blah, 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 which we've seen plenty of. I think this is a bloke.
But the lack of remorse is concerning.
Right. I don't think that he ever expected this would turn out the way it did. So I guess what I'm saying is that whilst we're hearing a tale of a bloke who kidnapped and murdered somebody, I think it was a tale of escalating
accidental death,
seriousness, not the dirty pedo who picked someone up and raped and murdered them and dumped them. I'm going it's murder because he absolutely did all of these things that he had no right to do. I'm comfortable with him getting done for murder, and I'm comfortable with him having life. I just think that it wasn't his intent for that. That wasn't his end game. That just happened through the journey. As far as the sentence, gosh, it's hard. I mean, I think he got a little bit of divine retribution, dying of a heart attack playing tennis in the prison tennis tournament. Like, I'm not sure that's a thing. So, I feel like Schmitty's God, I'm not religious, someone's God has just gone, fuck you, mate. Fucking hell,
I was happy to keep you in jail, but now you think you're going to be playing tennis?
I don't think
so.
Tennis in prison after what you've done?
Not mixed bloody doubles on a Sunday afternoon with some Pims. No.
Not on my watch, mate. Fuck that.
They're in their whites having Pims in the prison.
You're in the
Goulburn Jail Invitational.
You're a hospital orderly, protected from other prisoners. Now you're fucking playing tennis. I'll be fucked, mate. No fucking way. In Goulburn. You're not even in a proper prison. You're in fucking Goulburn. As a punishment or as a sentence, I don't know. Is dying on a tennis court, when you think that you've committed this, you've done this horrible thing, you're now in jail, but you're in jail and you can be a hospital orderly away from the other prisoners, and you can play tennis in the Goulburn Jail Invitational, and then you just get struck down with a heart attack. It's kind of nice. I'm okay with that.
Swanee?
Tricky, but I was thinking I wanted to sort of work somewhere within the area of greed, because I figured that was really what was motivating him. He just wanted, money for nothing. He needed money. He saw it as a
he didn't want his chicks for free. He just wanted his money for nothing.
So what I was trying to sort of conjure was some way that he could be, there'd be a degree of fraud. So I don't want little Graeme involved in any way, shape or form, because that's the bit that's heartbreaking, right?
Yeah.
So we can all dick about and joke about, Stephen Bradley, but I'd like for there to be some sort of comeuppance where attempt to get money through nefarious means and it somehow backfired. I don't know whether the fact that it was money that had been delivered and it was actually
newspaper
a decoy
cuttings
or whatever else, and then when he turns up and he gets it and it's not real money and he's been caught, so then he does time and he's, I just wanted it to backfire on him, because in a way that he was the true victim, not Graeme.
Yeah.
Because as you say, I don't think he went in there thinking, what I'll do is I'll murder their son and I'll get the money. I don't think that was ever what was going to happen. But, equally, you can't be kidnapping people and thinking that it's going to necessarily all work out honky-dory
it's not going to end
either,
well,
right?
No.
So, I just think that he needs some kind of comeuppance when it comes to, you wanted this, but it's not that. You pay the price.
We organised the ransom money, and we put a medium sort of explosive incendiary device in it. And so when he opens it up, it like blows his hands off.
That seems reasonable.
Like doing things in the future, very difficult, go through some pain. And everyone knows that you're the man who lost your hands because you were trying to ransom a
fiddling the till. Yes.
Well, you were stealing from people,
Yes.
There's also the opportunity to lock him in a car.
So you can't play fucking tennis and have a heart attack.
We can't play tennis. I can't play tennis.
And there we go. We've hit upon the perfect punishment.
There's also the opportunity to lock him in the car in,
January or February in Melbourne's 48-degree heat or whatever, and just have him die in that death.
All right. Well, that was a really interesting story, Clarky. Thank you.
Pleasure. Actually, thank you to Wikipedia, who had not only an incredible story, but it was like PDFs. You know how sometimes you go into Wikipedia and it's cross-reference and footnoted and blah, blah, blah. This was like a PDF that told me most of what I needed. So you said to me this morning, my God, you did that so quickly.
Yeah,
I'm
did. I was like,
it was all about that story. So thank you to the people at Wikipedia.
Very good. And as we say every week,
miss you already.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.